Sweet. So tonight, I'm actually kind of excited and also kind of nervous because we're going to talk a lot about excellence in worship. Um, and I feel like, I've been leading worship for a long, long time. Um, I don't even know how long, probably 15-ish years or something like that. And I feel like I hear a lot of people talk about like excellence, and it's kind of a touchy subject for some churches and some people. And so I'm excited, but I'm also nervous because I don't want to accidentally offend anybody. But I am very excited about the question and answer time at the end because I want to hear about what you guys think about all this stuff I'm going to talk about a little bit. But first, I want to start off. I'm only going to try to talk for less than 20 minutes because I really want to leave a lot of time to just hang out and talk. But first, I want to talk about what I mean by excellence in worship. Now, we're going to talk, like I said last time, I wanted to start off this 4-part series talking a lot about presence-centered worship because I believe that is the foundation of worship leading. Spending time in the Word and really making sure that we are running after Jesus with everything first and foremost. And then secondly, excellence is worship. That's why I wanted to do this the second time. But what I mean by that is basically I'm talking about excellence in arts. When we think of worship ministry, which is primarily what I'm going to talk about, we tend to think about music, leading, instruments. But I also want to kind of talk a little bit more about excellence in just all the areas of kind of worship in a service and things like that. So I'm going to touch a lot about. I'm going to talk about kind of a couple different areas. First, we're going to talk about worship team things like leading, musician, stage presence, skill, things like that. And then also kind of the preparation side, production, practice, even things like lights, projection, things like that. So when I'm talking about excellence in worship, I'm talking about, um, what can we do to improve these areas? How can we excel in all of these areas when we're talking about, service and things like that? So this is going to be a very practical focus thing. It's not going to be a lot of like, talking about like, quiet time worship or personal worship time, but more so a like Sunday morning or, a service or something like that. So like I said, I always hear a lot about people, whenever I talk about this, there's always this like, there's this tension, there's this battle between, what's more important? Is it heart? Is it pursuit of the Lord? Or is it skill when it comes to leading worship? You get a lot of people that are like, oh, skill doesn't mean anything. All you need is just a passion for the Lord and let's go after it. And then you have other people that are like, no, you need to be like 100, you need to be excellent. You need to know every single song. You need to have every single riff down to the T. And so I hear this so much. There's this battle about what's more important, heart, pursuit of the Lord, or skill, excellence. And I think the answer is in worship ministry, as leaders, as worship leaders, I think both are very important. I think while a heart that burns passionately for the Lord is absolutely what's most important in our Christian life, in our Christian walk. A heart that is burning passionately for Jesus, wanting to know Jesus more, is absolutely the most important. But I think that a heart of excellence is what ultimately comes out of love for Jesus. A heart of excellence comes out of that burning pursuit for the Lord. The more that you burn for the Lord, the more you want to please Him, and the more you want to bring your best life to Him with everything you do. So excellence is just an overflow of a pursuit for the Lord. And so I do think that, with that being said, I think that the term excellence in worship leadership can get distorted pretty quickly and pretty easily, because then when you think of excellence, you just think basically performance. And we're not talking about performance. We're just talking about bringing our best to the Lord. And so I think that excellence, I think that our arts, our giftings, our singing, our instrumentation, even lights, all that stuff, I think those could be powerful, powerful tools that God uses to usher in His presence and to help people focus and enter into His presence. But I also think that all of those things are also very powerful tools that the enemy uses to distract us from what's ultimately important. And so there's this book called Real Worship by a guy named Warren Wiersbe. I think that's how you say his last name. Honestly, I have no idea if I said that right. But this quote is awesome. It says, if art is our master, it becomes idolatry. But if art is our servant, it becomes ministry. So ultimately, it's not the I hear a lot with excellence, and when you pursue excellence, when you pursue skill, when you pursue making things the best it possibly can be, it kind of hinders you from a pursuit of the Lord. It kind of takes away from that, like, I just want to love on Jesus. You know what I mean? I just want to be in his presence. But I actually don't think that it's the pursuit of excellence that destroys that passion. I don't think it's the pursuit of excellence that hinders us or distracts us from that. I actually think it's when we allow our minds, we allow our hearts to become distracted about the stuff of the stage. Like, I think that's actually what hinders our pursuit of the Lord. When we're too focused, when we ultimately decide and choose that, better lighting and better instruments and better sounding everything is more important than actually taking time and spending with the Lord. That's what ultimately destroys that authentic heart. So I feel like before we even start talking more, I just want to prioritize that, presence first, pursuit of the Lord first, but excellence, you can still pursue excellence with and from that heart and pursuit for the Lord. And I'm actually kind of excited that we're talking about this right now, because I feel like, even to be completely honest, I'm a feeler. I'm also a very like open person. So, and I also don't have all the answers. So don't think that I'm a, amazing, speaker or anything. But so I've been struggling, the last like 6 weeks or maybe 3 months or so. I've been feeling this like this pressure, this weird pressure. And I was excited to talk about this because, even just, this is probably, very recent in my life. 2 weeks ago, I just decided to I finally got breakthrough in this area, but I realized that in my worship leading, I do a lot of traveling ministry. We've recorded some albums recently, and recently life's been super busy. We just had our first, newborn. He's 6 months old in 6 days. So he's really fat too. Man, I wish you guys could see him. His legs are just so chunky. But anyway, I've been really distracted by like a lot of things. And that's been getting in the way of my worship leading. And then all of a sudden, I just don't feel like equipped anymore. And as I'm like spending more time with my family, my quiet time has been a little bit more sporadic, and my pursuit of the Lord has felt kind of like, a little bit of a dry spell, which I'm sure you guys have all gone through. But I've been noticing in my worship leading that subtly I've been focusing way more on like picking the right songs and making sure the right songs sound good, and really, really being affected by if people will come up to me and say, hey, that was a great worship set, or that was I wish you did this song, all that kind of stuff. And just feeling this like pull towards, I got to do better. I need to make, I got to make this sound better. Our live stream is terrible. I need to figure out a way to make it sound better, put some reverb on the voices at least, all these things are like was really getting into my head. And as I was struggling through that, I just realized I had such a, I let that heart of excellence, which is, can be pure and can be good. I let that heart of just wanting to be the best, wanting to be perfect, wanting to be like, I let that get in the way of the ultimate goal of what we're doing as worship leaders. And it does creep in very easily. And it creeps in so subtly. All of a sudden, throughout the course of a couple months, I started feeling like I miss Jesus. Like I miss the Lord. And I think that we need to always remember that we're not looking to be excellent for the sake of people's praise, but we're looking to be excellent because we simply want to give our best to Jesus. We just want to give our absolute best offering to Jesus. Whatever we have, we need to have that heart, that mentality of, God, this is for you. That I'm not doing this to get the applause, to get the accolades, to be the best. I'm doing this because I love you. And it was when I got to that point, I actually, I just got to this point where I was like, I just want Jesus. I just want Jesus again. And, it was when I realized that I was doing it for the praise of man that he realigned my heart again. And I think that's something that we constantly, as worship leaders, as musicians, as people that are on this platform, oh man, that was loud. How do I turn that off? As people that were on this platform of a stage, we constantly have to fight against that internal like voice that tells you that this is all about the accolades, that this is for the praise of man. That's something that we have to be mindful of when we're talking about excellence. And so I think that's why it's very important. Once again, we need to constantly be in a posture of prayer, constantly checking our own heart, saying, God, see if there be any wicked way in me. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me, know my thoughts. We constantly have to be in that, because I think that's when excellence, when our services and when our worship leading thrive, is when we have that foundation of, God, this is all for you, not for the praise of man. And so again, I think excellence and skill, music, all that stuff, it's not an enemy of worship when it's used correctly. It's an excellent tool to actually direct people towards God. So let us, as we talk about this, I'm going to go really practical in just a second. But before we get into the practicals, let's just remember to make music, ministry excellence, our skill, make it our servant. Let's not look to the stage, to the production, to our own talents, to our own tools, to ultimately find our identity in those. But first, build our identity in Christ, root it and ground it in the love of Christ, so that we can use our gifts to honor Christ with them. So we don't worship the skill, we use our skills to worship. We don't worship the skill, we use our skills to worship. And so before I go really practical, I want to talk a little bit about, like I said, I talk about excellence a lot in churches, and I've heard a couple of things that people have said to me throughout the years, and there's a couple of lies, I say lies about excellence and skill when it comes to worship. And I just want to touch those really quick. So the first lie that I've heard a lot is it's excellence, and when you go really hard towards skill, it's not really authentic worship. It's not real worship. It feels fake. It feels like a production. And I think somewhere along the path, somebody started making this lie that too much excellence ultimately destroys your authentic heart of worship. It's almost like churches want to be good, but they don't want to be too good, too amazing, too excellent, because then it kind of gets rid of the authenticity of worship. And I don't really think that this is true. I think that, you can have an authentic, passionate heart for worship and still pursue excellence. In fact, I think that, you cannot have an authentic heart for worship without a pursuit of excellence. Because I think what, you guys probably have hobbies, you have things that you're passionate about. When you're passionate about something, when you really love something, you will pursue excellence in that craft. When I first learned to play guitar, I sat for hours and hours and hours, and I just sat and I played and I played and I played because I really wanted to, especially before I had like a concert or a gig, I wanted to really put my best foot forward, And so I think, when you're passionate, when it's true, when it's really a part of you, you're constantly looking for ways to improve, and I think this should be true for our worship ministries as well. As far as like, again, I said I'm a feeler, and I think a lot about, I always, when I lead worship, I always want to feel like real. I want to be in the moment. I want to be raw, authentic, tell the truth, shame the devil, and I'm always thinking that way, where I'm just like, if this is pre-rehearsed, this is just so fake. No way. When I first started leading worship, I was always saying that. And, so I'd always want to like feel the moment. So I'd never prepare. I used to hate preparing like, an exhortation before or after a song, like I'd always want those moments to just be real and raw. And something that I just realized in the last, 5-6 years is that the Lord speaks just as clearly before the service as he does in the middle of the service. Not saying that we can't deviate from the plan. In fact, I always encourage deviating from the plan, but always have a plan. And even those kind of those pre-rehearsed exhortations where you think of a scripture, or beforehand you're meditating on a song and you're asking God to like give you a scripture. Those things that can be tools, and those are just as real and authentic. Preparation can be real and authentic. So I think that excellence is very real. Excellence is authentic if our goal is a passionate pursuit of the Lord. I think it could be real. The second thing I hear a lot about when it comes to skill and excellence is that when worship teams are too overproduced, it's too flashy or it's too distracting for us. I can't really focus on the Lord. And actually, to be honest, I believe that the opposite is far more true than that. So I don't know if you've ever been to a church before. I'm sure it's not any of your churches, but I think that I've been to a few churches where you go in and the worship is not very skillful, I should say. And from time to time, it's really hard, especially for worship leaders. If you're a worship leader going to that setting, I don't know if you have this like me. I'm always like, oh, that note should be a little, all that stuff. It's always something I have to battle against. But I think that when I walk into a church, I think when someone's singing off key constantly or constantly playing the wrong note, I believe that's far more distracting than like a lot of lights and, good stage presence, or really, you know what I'm saying? And so when I hear people say that, oh, when you pursue excellence, it's too flashy, it's too distracting, I'm always like, I don't know. I honestly think it's more about your heart, the person's heart, than it is about that stuff. I remember the first time I went to like a mega church in our area. I was sitting in the crowd. This was probably 10 years ago. And I've always been a small church guy. Even now my church is about 200, on a good day. And so I've always been a small church guy. So I'm in this room with 3,000 people, and there's these massive big screens with the worship leader's face on them, and all these lights and these fog machines and everything, and it sounds amazing. And I remember I turned to my friend and I was like, if you ever see my face that big on the screen, I want you to come up and slap me in the face. I literally said that because I was so against that stuff. But what I realized was I was distracted, and that was distracting to me in worship because of my own pride. I was saying my way of worship, my small church, is more authentic. It's more real than that. It had actually nothing to do with the brightness of the lights or the distraction of the stage. It had everything to do with my own heart. And so I think when skills are used right, even lighting, I've heard it said that, some people have a skill to create like even backdrops for words and things that are very just honoring and artistic. It's an art for them, and it's an expression of love to Jesus for them. It's their form of worship. And when it's done right, it could actually be beautiful. And draw people closer to God. There was this one time I was at the Christian Musicians Summit in Buffalo, and they had this band who just, from 30 seconds into their worship time, I was just like, just felt the presence of the Lord. And they did this thing where there's a song where they did this really like this 5-minute instrumental where they turn off all the lights in this big sanctuary, 3,000 people, all the lights are off. And as the music built, they added blue lights and purple and pink lights and all these things. And then at the big crescendo of this big, like they just had all the band, all the drums were playing so loud. They just did this bright white light that just flushed out every single musician on the stage. And I literally felt like, I remember tears falling down my face because I felt like I was in heaven. I was like, this must be what it feels like to like see Jesus at the pearly gates, you know what I mean? And it was incredible. It was like this amazing moment of worship. And all of that was because this lighting person was just using that as an expression. And so if your heart's right, it can be a beautiful expression of worship, and it doesn't have to be distracting. And the other thing that I hear, and I'm going to run through this real quick because I just looked at the time and I always go way too long. Excellence is perfection. I've heard that lie too. Excellence is perfection. I think that when I say excellence in worship, I'm never demanding perfection. I'm never like, slapping their hand if they hit the wrong note or something like that. What I mean by excellent is, we offer God the absolute best that we have to give to him with what he's given us. So we offer him the absolute best we have with what he's given us. So we need to understand that no worship team is ever going to be perfect, but our goal is to create a value in worship, a value for worship, where we're striving to bring our absolute best, our best offering to the Lord. And I encourage you guys to really encourage your team, challenge your team to constantly be growing in their gifting, pursue their gifting, pursue that as a calling in worship. Because I do believe that if you're not challenging your worship team to kind of continue to grow, to continue to get better, you're accidentally creating this culture of apathy and frustration. You're creating, if you're not pursuing this, hey guys, let's grow, here are some resources, here's some things, let's just sit and work on these things. You're not valuing excellence. The worship team is going to get apathetic. They're going to think, oh, I could just get by. I don't have to listen to the songs this week. I'll just show up to practice. It doesn't matter. And then you're going to get frustrated. And it's just like this endless cycle of madness because you're mad at the team and they don't care anymore because you haven't really held them to a higher standard. And so it's not perfection, but you're always calling, hey guys, let's bring our absolute best to the table for God. Let's bring it as an offering. It's the hardest. Excellence in worship, to me, is the hardest thing to maintain working with volunteers. It really is. But it must be fought for if we're going to bring our best to Jesus in worship. So highly value excellence. I think that if you by me honoring and excelling in my craft, in my preparation, I'm showing my team, I'm showing myself, and I'm showing God how much I value worship, how much I honor God, how much I want to honor God. So there's a couple things, practical tools that I use a lot, especially for smaller worship teams, to kind of help improve your worship teams. And so there's like 9 here, and I'm going to run through them, and then maybe if you guys have questions about them, we can talk a little bit more, because we have a half hour or so to talk here. First thing is play to your strengths. So if you have a worship team, a lot of times we get discouraged if we're in small churches because we don't have, we don't even have a drummer. We don't even have a sound person. We don't have, 12 guitarists. So we can't play all the Hillsong United songs because we don't have 12 guitarists, And so it's constantly like, oh, I just wish I could do this. But, honestly, you can still be excellent and you can still sound really good by, maybe you just have an acoustic guitarist. Maybe you have a guy that kind of has rhythm. Buy a box drum for like $100, have them play box drum while they, they're practicing drums at practice, until they kind of get to that level of excellence, have them play box drum for a while. Things like that can really help. And I think that, a lot of people knock like acoustic-led worship, but I think that that's like my favorite thing in the world to do. Like have those like stripped down sessions, without all the 18 guitarists behind me. Those are like really good too, and you could excel at those. And so until you get like a big band, maybe you don't have that option. Just play to your strengths. Hey, I got a keyboardist and a guitarist. Okay, we're gonna practice these songs, and we're gonna create melodies, and it's gonna sound awesome with just those 2 people. The second thing that I say a lot, use a click track. So a lot of churches nowadays, they have in-ear monitor systems. A lot of small churches still have monitors. You can still use a click track with stage monitors. If you have a drummer, he could have one of those personal mixers that he could plug in. And so I do think that click track can be kind of scary. Even in my church, when they first start using it, everybody's like, oh, I don't like this. This feels really weird. This feels really uncomfortable. But it really, really helps keep the band in sync. And it honestly kind of shows you that you might need more practice than you actually think. I remember when I first started playing with a metronome, with a click track, I constantly got off. Like I got off the metronome, and it was so frustrating, but I just had to practice and practice. And now I don't even hear the click track anymore. It's just second nature to me. But I do feel like this is a simple thing, but it's a basic and simple way to call your team higher, to call them, to a higher standard and excellence and things like that. The other thing is the third thing is think dynamically when it comes to playing music. A lot of times I hear worship teams, they have like 4 singers, they have a full band, and it's like a train, like there's this train going, like, a really loud train. Have you ever heard a train go by you? It's just constant, like, like this loudness. And when you're constantly going from the beginning of the song to the end of the song with all 4 singers singing every single part of the song, with every single instrument just strumming as loud as they can, there's zero dynamics, and it sounds honestly like a train wreck. But you want to think more of it like a roller coaster ride, where you're kind of quiet in the verse, and maybe there's one vocalist singing, and then the bridge, the pre-chorus comes, and it starts to build up a little bit. I always think of like the song Forever, forever he is glorified. It's a very like somber verse, they're playing the keys, and then it's like the ground began to shake, and you're kind of going up the roller coaster, and then at the chorus it's like, now death, where is your sting, our resurrected king, it's ready to defeat it, and it's like forever, and you're just going down that roller coaster, and you're like, woo, he is glorified, like think of it like that as opposed to just a train wreck just going right through. It's more of like, and then you get the roll around of the roller coaster, and that's the second verse, where it's maybe some toms, adding a couple harmonies, things like that. So thinking dynamically in music helps your team too, because they're not just thinking, okay, I just need to play, play, play. They're thinking, oh, what should I play in this moment? They're actually getting better at playing with a team, at learning their parts, because they're not just showing up and just playing. They're actually thinking now, As far as worship leading goes, the fourth thing is learn hand signals and use vocal cues. A lot of times, I know a lot of worship leaders that don't like to do that because they kind of want to like surprise the people with like what song's coming next, or I don't know, like it's just weird sometimes. You just want to kind of be like, oh, the chorus is going to be so good. I don't want to tell them like it's coming, but we got to think that we're not trying to surprise them. We're actually trying to help them come along with us in the journey of worship. So I use I'm also very flamboyant with my vocal cues or my hand signals, because I'm not trying to hide it from the rest of the congregation. Like I use this for chorus, C for chorus, and I'll just be like, yeah, because I also want the congregation to know we're going to the chorus. The chorus is coming next, so let's do this, So I use chorus. This is bridge for me, and you can do whatever you want. There's verse, keep going. There's a lot of things. If you have questions about that, I could talk a little bit more about that later. But those hand signals really help even your band know where you're going next, because you want to let your band know, okay, hey, I'm going to go to the chorus next. So they're not like building up and getting really confused. Where are we going next? I don't know. You just tell them or yell it out. Let's sing forever, forever. Another thing, I think this is the fifth thing. I didn't number these. That was a terrible idea. Is the national number system. I don't know if you guys have heard of the national number system, but this has really helped me in my worship leading, especially in spontaneous moments. And I wish that I thought ahead and I bought a whiteboard or something, because I would show it to you. But it's this wonderful, it's basically, you have a root note, and then, so say the root note is the key of G. So that would be the 1. So the root note would be the 1. And then you basically count up the musical alphabet to 7, and that's the national number system. So you think G is 1, so that means A is 2, and then B is 3, 4 is C, 5 is D, and so on. And so instead of me writing, on a worship sheet music, G, C, D, I would write 1, 4, 5. So what that would do is I would go, hey, we're in the key of G, let's just play a 1, 4, 5 chord progression. So if you knew the national number system, you'd go, okay, key of G, so G, A, B, C, D. Okay, so I'm playing G, C. Or if I wanted to be like, hey guys, I lost my voice, let's sing it a little lower, let's sing it in F. then you're like, oh, okay, so great. So F, you know, G, A, B, C, B flat, C. Okay, great. I know that. You know what I mean? So that's really helpful, especially in like spontaneous worship moments, because then you could have somebody being like, hey, play the 4, you know, play the 5 kind of thing, something like that. As far as helping your worship team improve sound wise, something that I really use a lot is relative keys, which are, like I said, the national number system. The 1, the 4, and the 5 are relative keys. So what that basically means is these keys are easy to transition between, and they sound pretty, you know. And why I love using relative keys so much is because it avoids those awkward transitions where you have to stop all the music and then maybe like change your capo to the next thing, and maybe somebody over there is tuning, so you hear bang, 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 you know, all this stuff, but you're actually playing like this constant music that sounds pretty together all throughout the service. Because our goal is to try to create an atmosphere in worship where the congregation doesn't have to like stop, you know, in worship and go, wait, what's going on up on stage? Oh, he's tuning. That's weird. I'm going to stop until the next song. We're trying to create this constant flow to be the least amount of distraction on the stage for others to encounter the Lord. Another thing that I use, and this is my, 8th point, is pads. So like a drone pad, basically what this is simply is it's that piano sound. I call it like the anointing oil of worship. Everybody, you know, you have that like, oh, that like one, it's a 1 chord. It's just 1 chord. I have this app I use that's just 1 chord. It's 20 minutes long. So it just plays like a G chord, but it fills in that space so that there's this like, there's not that awkward tuning. There's not any of that stuff. So I use that a lot for transitions. And if I have to go to another key, I'll just have my keyboardist fade it out, press, you know, the key, and then fade it back in. There's a ton of really simple ways to do that. There's also a ton of really complicated ways to do that that I don't know how to do yet. But that's a really great, effective tool, especially if you don't have a full band. It really helps fill out the sound. The last thing before we take questions that really help fill out the sound, and this is kind of like the most controversial thing, is using loops or tracks. And so I think that I was actually super against loops and tracks when I first started using them. Basically what they are is they're just, you know, tracks from the song that, you know, you could actually buy. They're actually sometimes pretty expensive, but you could buy, you know, 18, they're called stems, where it's like acoustic guitar, electric guitar 2, electric guitar 17 if you're playing Hillsong United, you know, all these things. And you can have them playing behind you, and in your ears, you hear, you know, chorus, you know, and bridge. And so you know where they're going, and it really, really helps fill in the sound because you have all these instruments coming through the mains, and you're hearing, the band's hearing the click track, so you're staying on with the rest of the music. And that's a really helpful tool for a lot of people who don't have a lot of instruments. A lot of times I don't have an electric guitarist at my church, and I'll use tracks with electric guitar in it to help kind of fill in the space a little bit. And you could still, like, it takes a little bit more work, but you can still do spontaneous moments and figure out how to fit in those times within using this very kind of specific track. So a lot of people are using those nowadays. There's a ton of resources for that I could talk to you about more. But yeah, those are kind of some very quick practical tools that I use for kind of small church worship. And is Josh still here? Because he started writing, he started writing the things and then he didn't anymore.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
Josh messaged me and said that he had really bad internet.
Okay.
And to send him the notes. I'm trying to send them to him, but I don't think he's in the meeting anymore.
Okay, he's not coming back?
I don't know. I think he's probably trying to figure out his internet situation.
Okay. Well, we don't need him. I'm just kidding. So you guys have any questions or anything that I said that might have really made you angry or something like that, this is definitely the time to share.
I do. You didn't make us angry at all. But we struggle with many of the issues that you brought up for small worship teams. But I think one of our biggest struggles is convincing everyone of the need to practice and kind of the authenticity of being able to be well enough rehearsed to give it some freedom and come off of the music sheets, and because I think that's where we struggle a lot. So how would you suggest trying to convey that importance of worship practice?
Yeah, practice is the hardest thing in the world to try to figure out, because you have one of two people. You have the one person who's always too busy. I have a person on my team that has 6 kids and works full time and all this stuff, and all her kids are in like baseball and dance and all this stuff. And so she's always telling me, oh, I wish I could, but I can't. And then you have the people that are just, they think they're like really, really good, and then they don't want to practice because they're like, oh, whatever, I could just do this with my eyes closed and my ears closed, which would be really talented for a musician. But I think that we have to remember that before we're just musicians and worship leaders, we're also pastors. And if you're the worship leader of your church, talking with them, and I think that honestly, people, when you like kind of challenge them and confront them in sincerity and just like care, saying, hey, like, this is my vision for the worship team. Like, I have this like 3-page thing of all of our values of worship over at my church. And it's like, we value excellence, we value skill, we value presence-centered worship. And there's a bunch of other things. I wish that I had it. But I go through that with them. If I'm struggling with somebody, I'll sit them down and I'll say, hey, these are the things that are basically prerequisites and requirements to be a part of the worship team. And I really, really, I value these. I value you. I want you to grow in your gifting. Can you please, can we figure out a way that we can work together to make this the best that we possibly can make it? Because they need to know that practice to them it's offering their best offering to the Lord. And I don't think that just listening to the song once throughout the week is their best offering to the Lord. If they're part of the worship team, there are certain requirements that you need to have. And sometimes, sadly, that means that we have to have a serious conversation with people and say, hey, if you're not going to meet these requirements, then I'm sorry, we can't have you on the team. I need to kind of meet a specific standard. And that's really hard for especially small churches, especially if it's like your only drummer, it's really, really hard to do. And so, but trying to get them to figure out and understand the value and the importance of practice, because we're trying our absolute best to bring our best offering to the Lord, and in turn bring people closer to the Lord. Because honestly, the more prepared you are and the better you sound, the better you are, the more likely it is people are going to be focused on Jesus and not you and your lack of preparedness. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can I tag on one more question?
Absolutely.
I don't play an instrument. I play auxiliary percussion and sometimes the cajon when Joe the drummer is not available. So I don't really play anything else. I don't play the guitar. I don't play the keyboard. So when I'm leading, it's very difficult for me to get our team to kind of be a little bit more free worshiping instead of just, this is the order we're doing it in, like, we're not repeating this, or, we're going to leave a section here for open time, but that kind of just throws everybody off. So I'm trying to find ways to be able to, I guess, keep leading without being the actual one that's playing to lead. Suggestions or pointers? So
you're having a hard time telling them where to go in those spontaneous times because you don't know exactly where to tell them to go? Is that
right? Well, that's part of it, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Or just getting it to, it's more, I think, getting, whether it's hand signals or the vocal cues or something like that, learning some of those things, and if there's any different other tips or techniques, because we have people that are so regimented in how they, well, this music we have to do verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus twice. It's just if it's outside of that structure, they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And it creates a lot of stress and confusion for them.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's just lack of experience with that kind of, a lot of, for a long time, especially in a lot of churches I still go to, it's a 20-minute thing where it's, you do 4 songs and there's no, you know what I mean? And so a lot of people are just used to just listening to the song and then just playing it exactly the way it is, and then going to the next song, And I talk a lot about this kind of stuff in the last seminar we did in presence-centered worship. So you guys should definitely check that out. But really quickly, what I'd say is hand signals, especially if you're going to go into a spontaneous moment, practice those things at practice. Take a good chunk of time and say, hey, we're not going to go to the next song right here. I just want you to keep playing whatever chord progression we were just on. So if you don't know what that is, you don't have to. You can just say, hey, play the chorus chords. If you just ended on the chorus, just say, keep playing those chorus chords. And then hopefully they can figure it out. Another way of doing that is to just have like basic progressions that you just to teach them how to do spontaneous flow. You can have like a basic, if we're in the key of G, you could just say, whenever we do free worship, let's just go E minor, C, G, D, and I usually do this for like free worship, kind of like fire, Holy Spirit fire. And so like, I'll just look at my team and I'll just be like, yeah, let's do something. They know, okay, we're just going to play whatever chord progression we're in right now, and practicing that at practice, like really taking time to teach them to value that kind of stuff. Because a lot of it's very foreign, even still, to a lot of people. It's a very foreign concept. But I would actually also be curious to see if anybody else has any thoughts on that or any ideas. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that before we move on? It looks like everybody's still muted, so I guess that's a no. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else, guys?
I have a question.
Yeah. Hi, Miriam.
Hi. So I know a bit earlier you were talking about working with what you have and just like kind of coming alongside people and really encouraging them to give their best.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, so I've been doing that over the last year with our musicians. At first I was stuck in this, self-pity thing, like, oh, I'm just working with these people, they're not that great. And then it dawned on me like, hey, I'm supposed to like be pastoring these people and just coming alongside them and encouraging them. And a lot of them have really come a long way. However, there's a couple of them who, like, regardless of my best efforts to help them, hit a note, I'm thinking of a particular singer, and really work with them on hitting the right harmonies and all that stuff. It just seems like this person who's been singing for so many years has, I strongly suspect that she's just kind of lost her ability to really sing well.
Yeah.
And so I'm like faced with this dilemma where I don't know what to do, because I feel like I've done all that I can to help her, but I just don't know what to do. So like, my question is, have you ever had a situation where you've had to sort of like release someone or retire someone from the team? Like, I know that sounds terrible, but I don't know what to do.
Yeah, basically fire somebody, you're looking at say. In the next way, retire the person somehow.
Retire.
Yeah. It is 100% the most difficult thing that you ever have to do, because again, you said you're a pastor first, and pastors never want to, discourage people. They don't ever want, like, if they have a passion and a call for something, like, we never want to say, sorry, but I don't think you're called to that. But it is, as a leader, it's something that we have to do, and we have to kind of have thick skin about it. And so you know, a couple of years ago when I took over a church, a very small church that, you know, I had to make a lot of drastic changes to. And when you make drastic changes like that, you offend so many people, which in a way it was kind of easy because I was offending so many people at the same time. It wasn't as hard because you know it once, but like I had to have like these really open and honest conversations with people to where like, you know, there was actually even one time, and I don't, you know, you really have to have really thick skin for this, but record her singing at a practice. Have her come to a meeting and talk with her and just be like, you know, lay out your values and your foundation, you know, and if she's a singer, if she's been doing this for a long time, she should have some awareness as to like what sounds good. You know, there are some people who don't know that and they don't have that awareness, and that's a harder conversation. But people that have an awareness, you can record them at worship and then like sit them down in a meeting and just say, hey, here are our values. You know, we value excellence and all these things. And this song we've been working on, I just want to go through this, and I want to hear what you think about this. And you press play and you have them listen to themselves sing it and then be like, so how do you think that worked there? How do you think that you did it?
This sounds horrifying.
Oh, it's terrible. It's so, like, you have to have thick skin, like I said, because they might cry. They might actually go, oof, you know, I don't think I was as good as I thought I was. And that's where you have that openness where you're like, you know, I really value you and I really appreciate your, you know, being so faithful to this team. But this seems like this might be the season where you might be called to something else, you know. But honestly, 9 times out of 10, you're dealing with people. And, you know, in my years of pastoring, I've learned that people just suck. Let's be honest. People really suck sometimes. And my goodness, you can try to have the best, most pure heart for somebody and they will spew venom at you so much. So you have to have thick skin with any leadership. But if your goal, you know, you have to kind of constantly keep those values of your worship team, you know. And so if your value, you know, is I just want to have a community of people that love Jesus and we just sing together, then great. Like everybody could be a part of that worship team. You guys could all sing Kumbaya and have a great time. But, you know, if your value is I want to create an artistic style of excellence in music that ministers to the heart of God and brings others closer to the heart of God, then, you know, you got to make those tough decisions sometimes. And again, pray a lot. Do not, you know, underestimate the power of just praying before you have that meeting. Ask the Lord to minister to your heart, to say the right words. Ask the Lord to minister to her heart, so that she hears kind of correctly. You know, I honestly wouldn't highly recommend that whole method of just sitting down and pressing play unless you have if you're really confident in it, because that's really intimidating. But yeah, like I've definitely had to do that, and it's never easy. But I do think, you know, I can think of two people particularly that within, you know, 4 months of me being on the worship team, I kind of let them go, mainly because they weren't very good. But they took it pretty harshly, I think, because one of them was on the worship team since they were like 13, and it was like 20 years or something like that at this church. They grew up at this church and all this stuff, and it was like a hard conversation. But I had to like establish, I said, hey, we have a new system we're putting in place. We have new values. We have these new things we're implementing. And you know, we have a lot of singers on the team, and I can't like accommodate everybody that wants to be on the team. Don't be afraid of having auditions, honestly. Even when I came, I had everybody re-audition for the worship team, even if they've been on there for 20 years. And, you know, I've had one person leave the church and 2 of them were mad, but now they're fine. You know, and now they're in different positions at the church and they're serving faithfully, and it's great. They might still be a little sad, but, you know, leadership is tough. Leadership is very tough.
Yeah. Maybe you can fill me in, maybe by email or something, how you held auditions, because we have a way of doing it, but I think we could do it better. So
yeah.
I'm interested to hear what your method is on that.
If you guys are interested, and if somebody reminds me, this is why it's so sad Josh isn't here, because usually he's really good at reminding me what I say in these things. But I have some resources that I would give to you. I could actually email you my church values, my worship team, you know, the whole thing, I could email you the application I have them fill out. And I could also email you, I also, in that application, I explain the process of membership for, you know, our auditions.
We have that. We have an application, but I'd still be interested to see what
Yeah.
you have. Maybe I could tweak it or something.
I could definitely send it to you. Yeah, I had something else I wanted to say, but I totally forgot. But
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
have fun with that though. That's going to be a great time. You're going to really enjoy kicking that person off.
It's actually a family member, so I need extra.
Oh,
I need extra prayer.
that's going to be some interesting Thanksgiving dynamics. But
Yeah.
um,
Thank you.
yeah. Does anybody else have any questions? We have a few minutes.
Yeah, we got
Hey, Josh.
Adam has a question.
Hey,
Jeff.
man. How you doing, bud?
Good. How are you?
Your beard looks really nice.
Thank you. I've been using conditioner.
This looks great.
So we've in the last 6 months or so gone to a weekly practice.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, we were doing bi-weekly or sometimes just monthly.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing a weekly practice now where we rehearse for the Sunday morning service. And I'm just curious, some of the team members are very interested in like working on specific things in our practice time. And we usually take about an hour and a half to 2 hours for rehearsal. So I'm curious how you guys handle your practice times, your rehearsal times, logistically. Like, because what we try and do is we try and run through each song just so everybody's kind of played it at least once, and then give everybody a few days to go home and practice it themselves before we get together on a Sunday morning. So I'm just curious, like, how much time do you take at your rehearsals to practice specific things, you know, get together and say, okay, we're going to work on this harmony real quick, or I want to run through a transition between these two songs or something like that, versus just like running through the songs,
Yeah.
you know, without practicing 4 hours every time you do it or something like that.
Oh, I demand at least 6 hours. No, I'm just kidding. So what I do, so first of all, I use Planning Center Online, and I send out the songs with, you know, the files and the, you know, the media, the MP3 or something, or YouTube link. And by you know, Tuesday morning, and we have Wednesday night practices. So that gives them a day and a half to at least listen to the song, right? And, you know, depending on the person, you know, they'll either listen to it a lot or listen to it a little. And then Wednesday, you know, we have a 2-hour practice as well. And it really, so that's an interesting question, because it really does have to do a little bit with who you're working with. It differs talent-wise and things. I might take, you know, maybe 1 week I have a keyboardist who is just amazing. He knows how to make everything sound delicious. And so I don't take a lot of time with him to, like, you know, sit down and actually, you know, work on the melody lines that I want. But other weeks I might have another keyboardist that, you know, might need a little bit more help, and I'll spend a good chunk of time. But what I do is I start at 7. I try to get everybody there at 7. Usually we're going by 7:10, right? Very quickly run through the songs, you know, for about, I'd say 40 minutes or so, maybe 50, just to make it easy on my math, so that I can say 8 o'clock. And in that time, I'm stopping after that and saying, hey, you know, any questions on that? Any questions on the arrangement? Is everything good? Did you feel good on the harmonies? Did you feel good on that? And if they say no, I'll be like, okay, well, we're going to practice that later at the end of practice. We'll take some more time on this. And so I go through the practice. If I feel like the drummer at 8 o'clock, the drummer is confident, and usually, like, I've been blessed with really good drummers. They're usually really good, and they're pretty solid. Ben Burkett, Josh, you remember Ben. So Ben usually is my drummer. And so he's just really, really great. And so I'll be like, okay, Ben, have a good night. See you later. And he'll leave. And then I have like an hour of time where I'll say, okay, hey, I really wanted to work on that harmony that we were talking about earlier in that one song. But, you know, can we actually go through all of these choruses and bridges, and let's just really hone in on some of these harmonies. And I work on, you know, 2-part, 3-part harmonies for certain choruses and bridges. I usually take about 20 to 25 minutes on that. typically what I do, if I have somebody like my wife who's way better at harmonies, is my Achilles heel. I cannot, if it's not on the CD, I have no idea how to do harmonies. So if I have my wife there, I just let my wife take the singers and I just let her, work on harmonies with them. And if I have an electric guitarist who's learning, he's a funny kid, but I'll take him aside and I'll work with him while my wife's working on harmonies, so that I'm not like making him sit around for 20 minutes. If he and kind of work on him with melodies and what to play and where to play it. And maybe I usually have tracks. That's the other great thing about having tracks, is you can just solo certain parts so that they could actually hear, oh, here's the guitar line for this song, solo it, press play, and they're just listening along to it and playing it, and there's some incredible resources for that online. Most of them are, with that you have to pay for a subscription, but there's also a couple free ones. But so yeah, I usually try to keep, let's say 45 minutes to an hour. And this is honestly, I've always been kind of very strict on practices. I've just let's not waste any time. Let's get it done, because I want to value everybody's time, and I also want to get home by 9:30 or so. And so I'm always no lollygagging. Let's just chop. Let's get this done. And then, hey, any questions? Let's really hash this out, so that when we get to practice, I usually have them come 2 hours early on Sunday morning as well, so that when we practice on Sunday morning, it's almost, tight. It's as tight as it possibly can be. We've worked out the details Wednesday. They've had Thursday, Friday, Saturday to listen to it more, to work it out more. So Sunday, my expectation is, okay, you should have this at least mostly down, especially harmonies and things like that, So it's usually 2 hours, and, 40 to 50 minutes of that is going through the songs, and then 40 to 50 minutes of that is working with individuals. So I don't know if that helps, but
Cool, thank you.
yeah.
For the backing tracks, what software do you use?
So I use Loop Community, the Prime app, which is very simple, very, very simple. But a lot of people use multi-tracks. I don't have a lot of experience with multi-tracks, but I hear it's very similar, but a little bit more complex. But I think it's a little bit more versatile as well, which is the case with a lot more complex things. So Loop Community is very simple. I can, honestly, I should have showed you an example. I have it right here. Hold on. So it's called the Prime app. It looks like this, right? So as you can see, let me look up. So the song "Do It Again" by Elevation. So here's. So you can hear. That's what's going through the ears.
3, 4.
And then I'm gonna mute those so that you can hear the music. But can you hear the music or no? Is it? So that's a track right there. Well, okay, never mind. Well, that's what it looks like. And there's music playing right here. So if I didn't have somebody that knew how to play that electric guitar part, I could be like, hey man, I would love for you to learn this part, and I would solo it, and I would just so right now it's soloed. And I would have them listen to it so they could actually learn the actual specific part. But if I didn't have that person, I could just have it playing through the mains to make it sound a little bit more fuller, But yeah, so Loop Community is a very simple app. You just press stop and play, and you can put click tracks into it. It doesn't have to be with backing tracks. But yeah, multi-tracks as well is another very popular tool.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions before we hop off? We could probably do one or two more if you guys have any.
I just have one to piggyback off of, I think you said your name was Adam. For those rehearsals, is that when you're using that time to teach new music also, or is that separate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the past, it depends on the talent level of the team I'm working with again. But yeah, I definitely use those times to introduce new songs. I usually have a list, every, I'd say 4 to 6 months, usually have a list of about, 4 to 6 songs. Like I try to do 10 new songs a year. That's a lot more than a lot of people. Like I would honestly say aim for like 8 new songs a year. But I usually send out like, an email saying, hey guys, here's a list of some songs that have really been speaking to my heart that I want to introduce in the future, upcoming months. Here are the YouTube links. Get familiarized with these. In a couple practices we'll be practicing these, and then I'll put it in Planning Center on Tuesday morning so that they know that the song's going to be practiced Wednesday night. And then if the team needs more practice, I'll be like, hey, that was great, guys. That sounded awesome. I think we're going to hold off on this for a couple more weeks, but we'll still keep working on this song and that kind of thing. So I'll really make a judgment call after we've practiced it to see where we're at,
Even just after once?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And if, I'll always give, songs, new songs, more than one try for sure.
Okay.
Especially when
Sorry.
especially when you're introducing them to the church. Like I always do the
Yeah.
2 on, 1 off, 1 on, theory each month. You're doing it the first 2 weeks of the month, then you're taking a break from it, and then you're doing it the next Sunday. So you're doing it 3 times in 1 month, so that you're getting, most people only go to church, I think the statistics like 1.8 times a month. So they're most likely not going to hear it a lot. So, but yeah, what were you going to say? So I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. You're the expert here, but I think we're taking more like 2 months to learn a new song before we intro it.
Definitely.
But we're having bi-weekly practices, and it just leads back to where we're needing to make that shift of getting the importance of practice.
Definitely.
So that we can really get to the point where we're meeting more.
Yeah, and it's very hard. I don't want to make you guys think at all that trying to implement like really successful practices is the easiest thing in the world. It's very difficult. I still have a really hard time. Even in the last 6 months, I've had to cancel, probably a good 10 practices because of lack of people, and so it's not easy. It's not easy at all to implement practices. But I think, like I said, some people make the mistake of accidentally creating this apathetic culture because they don't value practices. So I've tried to not do that in my practices, but it's so easy to creep into, if you cancel one practice and everybody's like, oh, I guess the next one's going to be, you know what I mean? So staying consistent is really important. And that really helps people value and understand that you also value practice. But really, honestly, biweekly practices are great because there's some churches that don't have, a lot of resources, and there's people that work 80 hours a week and they can't commit to, especially if you have one drummer and you expect them to be at a practice every single week. Luckily, like I have, well, right now I only have one drummer who just had a baby, so that's been crazy. But, usually in the school year, I have 3 drummers. And so I'm having one of them serve twice a month, which isn't terrible. So that's basically bi-weekly practice. And the other 2 are serving once a month. So you could get people to commit to, twice a month, I would say pretty good, and then for the summertime, I actually do Sunday morning practices. That's it. Because most people don't want to go to church on a Wednesday night when it's super sunny out and there's a lake 20 minutes, so just really being, that's what I'm saying. Like you're a pastor first, and, sometimes there's seasons where you're really going for it, you're contending. And then there's other times where you're like, hey, I feel like my worship team has done a great job. They're, we need to give them a break on Wednesdays. We're just going to practice on Sundays and maybe do an hour early on Sunday, but you're still giving them, that Wednesday night free, so you're kind of, you know what I'm saying? So
Yes, thank you.
yeah. None of these are rules at all. Like, these are all suggestions and things that I've seen work, but, I feel like I just kind of contradicted myself by saying value practice, but also give them the summer off. You know what I mean? Like it really depends on like the season you're in and the team you have. And if you have a team that values and understands excellence and commitment, then, they understand also rest, and they can take a month off, so. Sweet. Is anybody else? One more or no? Or
I have one.
yeah. Hi, Hannah.
Hi.
It's my wife's name.
So our church has multiple worship leaders that sort of rotate throughout the month.
Yep.
And that means there's lots of different skill levels and different styles as well. We came from a church that had a worship leader, the same guy for the past 30 years.
Yeah.
And then we kind of, transitioned some things. So we still have a few people who are like, just, and I don't want to sound like disrespectful when I say it, but just like not up to date,
Yeah.
with a lot of the styles and stuff. And then a lot of the time, I think because there's different worship leaders and different worship styles, the church a lot of the time is unresponsive to those who are like really, really desire to see the church move in worship. I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
So I think my question is mainly the question is, how do you deal with a church that doesn't always respond or move in the things that you are trying to lead them into, mainly?
You're talking about like 80% of American churches now, so
Yeah.
don't even get me started on Western American church. I'm just kidding. Yeah, that is tough. I'd say that, especially if you're taking over a church that is kind of accustomed to certain ways and certain methods of doing things, again, sometimes people really suck, and people just most people are just really concerned. They're not really concerned about pursuing the Lord. They're really just concerned about being comfortable. Like what makes them comfortable, what makes them feel good, what makes them feel confident to take on another week at their job. That's the kind of culture we're trying to fight against in America, where it's like, a lot of times I always tell people I feel like I'm an evangelist to the American church because, my goodness, sometimes they just need a slap in the face. But I digress. So I think that you do your absolute best. I think I touched on this a little bit, I think, in the last webinar that we did, but I would say do your best to teach the importance of worship to your congregation. Taking time in your worship services to pray and say, hey, we're going to be real practical with them. We're going to take a few moments here, and I just want you to think about the cross. I want you to think about Jesus, what he's done for us. The sins he's forgiven you of. Think about how grateful you are for the goodness of God right now. And then let them sit, play something, let them sit for like 10 seconds. Even say, hey, let's take 10, 15 seconds. And I just want you to think about the cross. And then after that, I'll be like, now I just want you to thank Jesus for the cross, and just say verbally, say thank you, and what you're doing is you're teaching them how to not just follow a method or follow a program or singing the words on the screen, but you're actually teaching them how to like spontaneously worship themselves. It may be something as simple as just saying, hey, let's just sing the name Jesus over and over again. And I just want you guys to sing the name Jesus. There's power in the name of Jesus. If you believe there's power in the name of Jesus today, let's just take 30 seconds, and I want you to lift your voices. Just say Jesus, that kind of thing. That gets them used to kind of a little bit more of a impractical flow and a little bit more stylistically different. I also think that there's another thing. You didn't really ask a question about this, but I kind of want to touch on having multiple worship leaders at a specific church. So if I forget, tell me to get back to that. I also think that worship nights, prayer nights, help. It's a little bit less of a intimidating setting for people to come and learn how to do that kind of thing. So maybe once a month we'll have like a worship night. And we invite the whole church. We make it a big thing. We have, snacks downstairs, childcare provided. Come on out Friday night. Let's do this. And you really go for the presence of the Lord at that kind of thing, where it's a little bit less Sunday morning, like structured, but you're just like, we're going after the heart of God. Let's do this. And you really go, hey, thanks, Josh. See you, man. See you, Adam, and other friend whom I forgot your name. I'm so sorry. But thanks for tuning in, guys. So like really going after the presence. And like, honestly, once people encounter the presence of the Lord and they actually say, that's what happened to me in my life. Like when I was at the altar and I just met Jesus in a worship experience, it changed my life. And I just, from that point forward, I've been in this pursuit of the presence of God. And so doing what you can to try to encourage a culture of pursuit, by worship nights, praying, interceding for your church, like legitimately, even before practice or even, separate times, like get your worship team together, your worship leaders, and really cast a vision for your church. I believe this church is going to experience an awakening, and I want to pray for that awakening in the spirit,
Mm.
Power of prayer. I'm telling you, that's the absolute most important thing. Really quick about worship leaders, multiple worship leaders. That's a really fun thing to try to figure out. But I think that I have, in my small little church, I have, I think, 9 different worship leaders that I would confidently send to another church as a worship director or worship pastor. They're like that good. They're like really talented. They're songbirds. Some of them can come up with spontaneous melodies. Like, it's amazing. These guys
Send them my way.
Yeah. No.
Mine too.
I'm keeping them, Miriam. No. You guys should listen to our album, Praise Arise by New Hope, New York.
I
Because
did. I checked it out.
thank you. It's all those songs were written in those moments that I was just telling you about. Those, like, we sat down and wrote one of those songs. The rest of them were out of spontaneous moments in worship settings at worship nights or Sunday morning services or something like that.
Mm.
But anyway, they're just amazing. But so what I was saying was, trying to figure out different styles and different, plans and different songs they want to lead and what songs they want to introduce is super challenging. But I think that what's important is there always has to be like a leader. There always has to be a leader that makes decisions. And so you have your pastor, but so for me, I'm the associate pastor / worship pastor. And so people, I welcome, my worship leaders to come and share with me their thoughts or their styles or what songs they want to do, or if they have a method they want to do that they think might work. I'm always open door policy, but I have the final say with that kind of thing. And so if there's a specific style that I think that my church is going after, and usually that's the leader's style because that's the primary leader. I think I talked about this with the Presence webinar too, so you guys should definitely listen to this. But I had a guy when I was younger, really into the 80s, like super into the 80s, long hair down to his hips and just like super in the 80s. Every single song he would shred like he was Joseph Giovanni on his Ibanez guitar. And my goodness, how great is our God? I'd be singing this really like, how great is our God? It was like, what am I going to do with this? And I just had to tell them, I said, hey, listen, like, I love that you are so good at your instrument. You could shred like no other till 11 o'clock, And I told him, I said, but I'm going a specific style. There's a specific style that I want to kind of tap into and go for. And in those moments, if you could do more like swells or more simple, I want to create more melodies as opposed to like a shred. And so those kind of things, you need to have like a leader that's guiding and casting vision for the entire team. And so, and if those worship leaders don't like it, then that's a different conversation that leader needs to have with them. And so that wasn't really your question, but I have that problem a lot because I have a lot of worship leaders on my team. So yeah.
Did I miss was there another huddle before this?
Yeah, there was 2 months ago, we did a huddle on presence-centered worship. I don't think that it was the first one before they really got into the huddle thing, Elam Fellowship. So anyway, I think Josh said at the beginning of this that it's recorded somewhere, and you can listen to it if you want. It's about an hour and a half long too, with a lot of questions. So yeah.
Do you know where?
Do I know where? Sorry, I was just laughing at Miriam's cry for help.
We'll take the leaders too. If you got 9, send a couple over to Miriam. We'll take 2. We're going.
One of them's getting married. One of them's married to me. So I mean, I could probably muster up 1 or 2 maybe. That is ultimately my goal, but I think my church specifically, like, is in a season of like, it's weird, guys, for real. I'm in the middle of nowhere, Bloomfield, New York. There is nothing there.
Well, then you'll feel right at home in Clintondale.
Right? Yeah, no, I know. But we have a thriving church, that we're getting to. It's just weird. And the Lord is sending me all these really good musicians in this small little church. It's just insane. It's just weird. But I don't think it's good. It's like a normal thing. I think in a couple of years, all these guys are going to leave me and go. So, hey, who knows? We'll see what happens. Maybe you'll get one of them in a year or two. But yeah, anyway, I don't know where that link is, but Josh would know, and he could tell you, but he's not here. So I could ask. Yeah, I'll ask him to send it to you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, so thank you guys. Oh, we went way past. Sorry. Thank you guys so much for taking your time to a Monday night to spend with me. I love this so much. We're doing another one next month. I forget what the topic is, but I might change it anyway. But if you ever have any questions or anything, I'm on. I don't use social media a lot because I think it's the devil, but I do have my wife check it sometimes, and Facebook Messenger I have. I also have a website. You could email me through my website. Whatever you guys ever need, like, I am here for you. I love worship leaders. So yeah, thank you guys so much, and I hope I'll see you next month at least. So, also, guys, this is a shameless plug. Before I leave, I run a worship camp in July, in the middle of July, and we're always looking for help, volunteers. We're always looking for students that you want to send, for people aged 12 to 19, but I always need help. I always need counselors. Guys, it's the greatest camp in the history of camps. I have oh my goodness, the Lord moves in these like crazy powerful ways over these kids, and our goal is to get them caught on fire with the presence of the Lord, not that rock star worship mentality, just really get that like intimacy with the Lord and go back to their churches and spread the fire. And it's been really cool to see. So if you have any students, I would love to give you more information on that, or if you guys just want to come and either counsel the kids or hang out and serve in some way, I'd love to get you guys to come.
Send me more info on that, please.
Yeah, it's hold on, I'll type anyworshipcamp.org.
And then can you sign us up for the adult version?
Yeah, I wish I had. I actually have been thinking about doing like a retreat. It's hard to get a bunch of adults to take a week off of work to go to a camp, but maybe a weekend. So
yeah, weekend.
Or a long weekend.
Yeah, we have been thinking about it. I think maybe, you know what? I might just do that this year. We'll see. I'll let you guys know. So,
Yes.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. You guys have a good night.
All right, thank
You
you.
too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good to see y'all. Good to see you, Miriam.
Good to see you too.